Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today Television. I'm Sakshi Batra and this is our special offering Budget Stocks under NDA Nomics 3.0. This is a series that we've started right a month ahead of the upcoming budget in hopes of which are the key sectors and stocks that could be in limelight in the upcoming budget, could be the focus of the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman now. What are the big expectations there and how should you as investors be really looking at such opportunities and maybe looking to add stocks in your portfolios right ahead of the budget as well. And today on this edition, we are going to be focused on the entire auto space and the auto components industry as well. Remember, the auto components industry in its recommendations has submitted to the Ministry of Finance and the nodal ministry for automotive industry. The Ministry of Heavy Industries has sought for certain measures from the upcoming budget as well. Now, what are the key expectations here? We'll try and understand on this special edition. Joining in us on this show is Mr. Amar Singh, who will be breaking down for us the key sector upgrades and the stocks and opportunities that you have with you. And also, let me start off this discussion first with my colleague Chetan Bhutani, who is joining us on the story now. Chetan, do tell us and all our viewers, what exactly is it that India's auto component sector is particularly seeking from this upcoming budget?
The sector currently was valued at about $56.5 billion in FY21. And by FY26, it's estimated to be valued at about $200 billion. So it's a great industry for India's GDP and, of course, the growth projections. But yes, there are the certain point of contention issues that the industry, ACMA, Automobile Component Manufacturers Association, has in fact submitted to the Ministry of Finance. There are 3 to 4 recommendations that they have put out. First of all is incentivizing capital expenditure, which really means that the reintroduction of additional investment allowance provisions. The depreciation rates is, however, has been a very long time been a point of contention for the automobile component industry. They want that the depreciation rate should be increased from 15% to 25% on plant and machinery in the auto component industry. GST rates on EVs and their components should be rationalized and should be bought at par with the industry standards. There's been 1 or 2 tax issues as well, and the industry has sought tax clarifications on deductions for business benefits and perquisites under the section 194R. However, the last Sakshi, a very important issue is, of course, the industry has wanting the government to introduce an amnesty scheme to resolve dispute legacy issues under the new custom laws. So these are 3 to 4 broader points that the automobile component industry has in fact submitted. We will be speaking to the CMD of Subros and other companies who have been a part of ACMA and currently the president of ACMA. And she's been very volatile about really, expecting a lot of new developments from the upcoming budget. Of course, every sector deserves and wants new things out of the budget. But yes, the automobile component industry, which is likely to be valued at about $200 billion in coming years, is definitely expecting some more development at its end.
Right. Thanks a lot then, Chetan, for sharing all that update with us and all our viewers. Let's now go across to Mr. Amar Singh to really understand how is he viewing the stock market opportunity within the auto and the auto component space right ahead of the budget. Amarji, good morning and thank you so much for taking the time out. You heard my colleague Chetan really spell out the key expectations that the auto components industry really has from the upcoming budget. Do you also believe that autos could be on the top radar of the government this time around, and is this an interesting space to really look at from investors' point of view ahead of the budget?
Yeah, I would say that auto sector is one of the, if you look at the core sectors, penny economy like banking and finance, you've got auto, metals. These are some very core sectors of the economy which have a significant trickle-down effect across the board. And Indian auto industry, I would say where we are today, we have a potential of at least 5x growth. I'm talking about the overall auto industry and the auto ancillary space, at least over the next 5 to 7 years, maybe 10 years max. So it's a huge window of opportunity. But yes, at the same time, the government is also focused on how to make India manufacturing-based creation of jobs. So there is a lot where a government can do a lot, because what we are seeing is many of these auto ancillary companies and auto companies are moving to certain parts of South India. So how we can ensure that it's more broad-based across the country. And India, as I said, we've got a huge manufacturing opportunity in terms of auto ancillary, and we've got the expertise as well. So how do we capitalize on that, and what steps the government takes with regard to, I would say, rationalizing of the GST or maybe some tax deductions So that's one area where one can definitely focus on from an investor perspective. As speaking about the stocks, I would say in the auto space, I've always liked Tata Motors a lot. So that's one stock from a long-term perspective. Yes, more of a, at the current levels, more of a long-term perspective. And I'm saying 3 to 5 years, you have to have an SIP mode. Apollo Tires is another stock from the auto space. That is very strong, going very strong. That's one stock one can definitely look at. I would say even Ashoka Leyland is one stock which I like because we are seeing a lot of construction infrastructure in terms of highways, in terms of expressways, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So the cost of transportation, the cost of the time taken for transportation, that's coming down significantly, and we have a long way to go. So there were HVC, that is heavy commercial vehicles, manufacturing companies, they also have a lot of opportunity. But yes, what the biggest challenge for investors at the current levels is that prices are at record highs, so it requires a lot of courage to enter. But at the same time, I would say go in a staggered manner because that's the way to look at the markets from the current levels. Then Bajaj Auto is also one stock which I like a lot from the auto space. It has, I would say, performed exceedingly well, more than double from the levels. But yes, again, on correction, this also is one stock. One can look at a portfolio of at least 3, 4 stocks from the auto space, which I've talked about, and look at investing from a long-term perspective. So that would be something which I would advise.
Okay, got that. Interestingly, you talked about Tata Motors, and I wanted to understand a bit more detail on this company with you. Do you think, of course, it's been the best performer on the Nifty in the previous fiscal year? It has rallied and created wealth for investors after a long haul with things turning positive within the company. Now, the next trigger that everybody is looking at is probably the demerger of the PV and the CV business within Tata Motors. For somebody who may be looking at an entry at these elevated levels because the rally has already taken place, do you still see that for somebody having a very long-term view can continue to hold on Tata Motors?
See, what we are seeing in Tata Motors is that it definitely has been I would say, a multi-bagger would be a very milder term because the stock at a point of time traded as low as 60 and currently it's close to 1,000. So it's up by more than 16%, 16x, 16 times. So the stock has delivered phenomenal returns. Overall, what we are seeing is that the long-term trend, though it remains positive, intermediate-term trend, we are seeing some sort of consolidation, some sort of I would say profit booking happening. So it's more of a range in Tata Motors, 900 on the upside and 1100 on the 1100 on the upside and 900 on the downside. That's the range which we are seeing for Tata Motors from a medium-term perspective. So I would say anything at the current levels, more of a risk-reward ratio wouldn't be that favorable. But any correction is a buying opportunity in Tata Motors because this is one stock which I would say, or a company I would say, which is there to stay and which would definitely benefit from the EVs space as well as the overall growth of the automobile sector because it is now spread not across only in India but across the world and also across different segments. So that advantage definitely plays out for Tata Motors.
Right. Sir, you pointed out EV space. This is going to be my next question on the entire electric mobility that has been the focus of this government in the previous few years. And hopefully so this will also get more accelerated going forward from here. How are you looking to encash the best of the opportunities within the EV space? Is it still viable and wise strategies to stay with the leaders like you said, Tata Motors and all of these OEMs which are now focusing on the EV division largely? Or should one be really looking at the auto ancillaries that are going to be supplying to n number of clients within India and abroad with their electric vehicles products as well, auto parts as well. So how do you think is the best way that viewers can address this space?
See, EV, I would say we are at the tip of the iceberg, I would say, when we haven't really scratched the surface. So in terms of EVs really taking over, that would take maybe a decade where we would see at least 7 to 10 years to really see a significant chunk coming from the EVs are forming a significant chunk. So that's one. But yes, there's a lot of opportunity there. I would say some of the companies who are manufacturing batteries and serving the EV space, there also could be very good opportunities. Like Excite is definitely one of them. It has rallied significantly. It's up almost 3x over the last couple of years. But this is one stock on any correction can be a buying opportunity, or one can also look at. I would always suggest that when the markets are trading at record highs, and so it's always best that you invest in a staggered manner and you look at investing from a at least 3 to 5 year cycle, because that's the way the markets really look at things. You shouldn't be expecting anything maybe in 3 to 6 months. If it happens, that's well and good. Otherwise, we could having a long-term horizon would be a better opportunity.
Okay. You did talk about the tire space within the ancillary pack doing very well at this point. How about the entire bearing space, Amarji? Because this is one space that has garnered all the attention over the last 1 or 2 months as well. Stocks like Timken, like SKF India, Schaeffler, for instance. These are the stocks that have actually rallied pretty sharply in just a matter of 2-3 months odd. How are you looking at the opportunity within the auto component space and specifically focused on the bearing makers?
So see, they are all the fortunes of these auto ancillary companies are tied to the auto companies, and what we are seeing is that most of the auto companies which I talked about, like Mahindra and Mahindra, Tata Motors, then Maruti, Bajaj Auto, Ashoka Leyland, all of them have been trading at significant higher levels. So we've seen that benefit trickling down across the board, across the bearings company and other auto ancillary companies. Talking about the stocks which you mentioned, companies which you mentioned, SKF. SKF again is strong, but we are seeing some sort of consolidation there. The other stock which you mentioned, Timken. So if I look at Timken India, we are seeing some sort of consolidation there as well. I would say that in these companies, Timken and SKF, right now we are seeing some sort of profit booking happening. But again, these would be long-term opportunities. One should look at investing on corrections and building a sort of portfolio. And I would say don't get into too many auto ancillaries in your portfolio. Maybe 3 to, if you're having a portfolio of 12 to 15 stocks, then maybe 2 to 3 should be from the auto space.
Okay, got that. Well, Amarji, the other space that we have not discussed thus far is the two-wheeler space as well within the auto space. And why I'm interested in this is because, again, there is this entire focus of this government on the rural space that is being anticipated, that the upcoming budget could be seeing government's greater focus on rural recovery per se, be it by however measures that may look at. But in case such a focus really comes in, how are you looking at the two-wheelers consumption space? Will this be an attractive space to be in?
I would say that definitely the concerns are amongst the government as to how to really bump up the, I would say, rural demand in not only across the auto space, but across the board. So that's one concern. And how do we create more jobs? How do we ensure that there's more money in the hands of the people in the rural as well as in the urban? And there we see that the government could really take some steps towards that direction. That's a big possibility, which investors and market participants are expecting from the budget. Let's hope and see. And talking about the two-wheeler space, I would say two-wheeler again is you got to understand that if we are to grow to a 10 trillion economy and a 20 trillion economy over a period of time, and definitely we'll grow, there's no doubt about it. So we will be growing across all these sectors, and two-wheelers is also something which people really start with, and then they move to four-wheelers. So this is a sector which is there, I would say, more I would say resilient amongst different sectors. You stick with the leaders like TVS Motors or Bajaj Auto. You can, as I said, you can have one stock from the heavy commercial vehicles, one from the auto space, and maybe a couple from the auto ancillaries. So looking at Bajaj Auto or maybe TVS Motors, one can look at from a long-term perspective.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Amarji, for being with us on this show and helping us understand what could be in the offing in the upcoming budget with respect to the entire auto component space, and how does one really look at this as an opportunity? What is the best way to approach the auto space and the varied varieties of companies that are addressed there, be it from the OEMs, two-wheeler space, or even the EV-focused companies, the bearing makers, as well as the entire ancillary and the component makers. What are the big expectations and the key stocks that one can be really looking at from this perspective? Thank you so much for being with us on this edition, and viewers, we'll wrap it up at that, but do stay tuned on to Business Today, as 12 noon is when we will be addressing all your stock related queries on daily calls.
आगामी सत्रों में मेरी सरकार अपने इस कार्यकाल का पहला बजट पेश करने जा रही है। ये बजट सरकार की दूरगामी नीतियों और फ्यूचरिस्टिक विजन का एक प्रभावी दस्तावेज होगा। इस बजट में बड़े आर्थिक और सामाजिक निर्णयों के साथ ही अनेक ऐतिहासिक कदम भी देखने को मिलेंगे। भारत के तेज विकास की जन आकांक्षाओं का पूरा करने के लिए रिफॉर्म्स की गति अब और तेज की जाएगी। मेरी सरकार का मत है कि दुनिया भर में निवेशकों को आकर्षित करने के लिए राज्यों में स्वस्थ स्पर्धा हो। यही कॉम्पिटिटिव कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म की सच्ची स्पिरिट है। राज्यों के विकास से देश का विकास इसी भावना